The desert night was thick with silence, broken only by the roar of Jake Martinez's Kenworth T-880 slashing through the empty Arizona expanse on Interstate 40. At 11:47 p.m., the cab's static crackled as a voice cut through the static sharp, deliberate, tinged with an edge of unease. "Breaker 19, this is Desert Fox. Any drivers heading east past Flagstaff tonight?" Jake's fingers tightened around his microphone, grateful for the semblance of contact after hours swallowed by darkness. "This is Rolling Thunder, mile marker 201. What's your 20? A brief pause, then a whisper, tense and low. "About 15 miles behind you. Listen, I gotta ask something serious. You see anything walking beside your rig tonight?" The question froze him. Over his 12 years on the road, he'd heard stories. Ghost hitchhikers, weird lights, unexplained sightings. Usually dismissed as trucker folklore, the caffeine crashes or sleep deprivation hallucinations. But Desert Fox's voice carried a weight that made his stomach tighten, instincts prickling. "Walking. Brother, I'm doing 70, Jake replied, voice steady but wary. "Nothing but desert and stars out here." "Exactly," the other driver said softly. "That's what I thought too, until I started asking around." An almost conspiratorial whisper. "Plenty of guys seen it on this stretch between Flagstaff and Albuquerque. They don't talk much. They think others will call them crazy. But it's out there, and it's been shadowing trucks for months." A static cough muffled the line. Jake glanced in his passenger side mirror, then out beyond the moonlit rocks and Joshua trees stretching in silent vigil. The vast desert held its secrets tight, unmoving. He tried to dismiss it. Fatigue, he told himself, just fatigue. Long-haul drivers knew that tired hallucinations often played tricks, blurred the lines between real and unreal. Pull over, rest, repeat. That was how you survived these stretches. But the shape stayed. In his peripheral vision, a tall, slender figure jogged alongside his truck, staying just at the edge of his headlights, impossible in its endurance. Every time Jake turned his head, it vanished, only to reappear when he looked straight ahead. The silhouette stayed stubbornly close, a dark, out-of-place presence keeping pace at 70, then 72 MIF, unyielding. Mile marker 180 blurred past as Jake's pulse quickened. He reached for the radio, desperation brewing in his chest. No response, only the relentless hiss of static. Eager to escape, he sped up, trying to outrun what his mind was silently fabricating. Yet the vision persisted, an invisible shadow alongside him, a cruel parody of a person tall, thin, cloaked in dark tattered clothing that fluttered in the desert wind. Its movements were unnatural, too fluid, too fast, covering ground in impossible strides. The further he went, the clearer the shape became. Its gait was wrong, limbs elongated, head tilted at an uncanny angle, possibly injured, malformed. Sometimes it turned its head lazily toward him, acknowledgement or challenge, before mimicking his acceleration, matching his speed with eerie perfection. At mile marker 165, instinct overtook caution. He pulled into an isolated rest area, the kind long-haul drivers used to defy exhaustion. The parking lot was deserted, except for a lone car with Nevada plates, its occupants likely asleep. Jake cut the engine, the deafening stillness pressing into his ears after hours of engine growl and road noise. He checked his cargo straps, examined his tires routine, mundane. The desert's scent of creosote and sage filled the air, calm but fragile. The mind can play tricks, he told himself, especially at 3 a.m., especially on familiar routes. It had happened before, drivers losing grip on reality, driven mad by monotony and loneliness. He resumed his journey, confident. But just as he resumed, the figure returned this time on his driver's side, matching his speed, no longer just a shadow, but a humanoid form, too tall, too thin, with arms that hung unnaturally low, head cocked at a disturbing angle. Its gait was lope-like, covering impossible ground with each stride, almost floating in inhuman rhythm. It seemed to turn its head in a slow, deliberate acknowledgement, eyes unseen but felt. The miles seemed to stretch into an endless corridor of dread. Mile marker 150 loomed as the boundary of real fear. The thing had endured, maintained perfect pace with him for over an hour, never slipping behind or forging ahead. Experiments in rapid acceleration, sudden braking. Nothing disturbed its unnatural rhythm. It adjusted seamlessly, as if tethered to the truck by unseen strings. Suddenly, a voice crackled over the radio, sharp and trembling. "Nighthawk to Rolling Thunder. You seeing any of this?" Jake's hand froze, clutching the mic as his voice wavered. "Go ahead," he managed, throat tight. "Westbound at mile marker 140. I need you to listen carefully. I just saw something on the eastbound side. Someone running alongside a big truck, keeping perfect pace. Can't see details in the headlights, but it's definitely not normal." The words hit him like a blow. Another driver, another set of eyes confirming the unexplainable. The shadow was real. It wasn't hallucination, fatigue, or paranoia. It was out there, staring back at him through the night. Focused, relentless. "Rolling Thunder," Nighthawk continued, voice low and steady. "I see it too." Melissa Rodriguez stared at her reflection in the flickering fluorescent bathroom mirror at the Flying J truck stop outside Amarillo, Texas, and everything about her felt wrong. The face was hers, battered with fatigue, eyes tired, drained from 14 hours of nonstop driving. But behind those tired eyes lurked something colder, sharper, a calculating shrewdness she had never seen before. She blinked rapidly, splashed her face with icy water. The mirror offered her no answers, just her own familiar features, slightly distorted by exhaustion and too much time stuck on roads that whispered strange secrets. Long-haul trucking was her lifeline after Miguel's death. After all, it paid the bills, kept her and her 2 kids afloat, and yet every mile was a sacrifice. Days away from home, sleeping in the cab, eating greasy gas station food, fighting the gnawing stress of deadlines. She'd learned to recognize the creeping sense of hallucinations, the tired eyes in the mirror looking back with an evil glint, the shadows lurking just beyond her headlights, and what she'd just seen, staring back at her now, fit that pattern perfectly. She dried her face with rough, scratchy paper towels, then ambled back toward her Freightliner Cascadia, her cargo of electronics bound for Phoenix under searing security seals. The parking lot hummed with familiar activity drivers stretching, inspecting their trucks, grabbing quick meals, these ordinary rhythms, the comfort of routine in the loneliness of cross-country miles. But her calm shattered the moment she heard a voice, sharp and low, slicing through the ambient noise. "Yeah, that Rodriguez woman from Dallas, trying to sell cargo at Barstow," Border Patrol said. "Nearly 50 illegals found in her trailer. Specialist case, huh?" Melissa froze, pretending to check her phone while the conversation played out like a knife twisting in her gut. 2 drivers, their voices like faint ghosts from another life, detailed her name, her route, her supposed wrongdoings, drugs, trafficking, recruiting others into smuggling networks, each worse than the last. Her steps slowed, her hand trembling as she approached. "Excuse me," Melissa interrupted, voice steady but wary, "but I couldn't help overhearing. What Rodriguez woman are you talking about?" The bearded man, Bill, his name badge shamefully visible, shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, I don't want no trouble, just passing along what I heard. I meant no offense." "I'm Melissa Rodriguez," she said, voice firmer now. "I run electronics from Dallas to Phoenix. Whatever you heard, it's not me. Yet the uneasy glance they exchanged told her that trust was slipping away. Fast. "Look, lady," Bill murmured, voice low. "Be careful out there. A lot of heat on your name right now." She felt the weight of suspicion pressing down, heavy and suffocating. Her reputation, what little she had, was already unraveling in the industry's tight-knit circles. False accusations, she knew all too well, could bring her career crashing down in an instant. Her hand trembled as she pulled out her phone, dialing her dispatcher, voice trembling with a strange blend of fear and defiance. "Janet, it's Melissa. I need to ask, have you been getting any complaints about my driving or cargo? Anything unusual?" "Melissa," Janet replied, confusion audible. "You just called me 20 minutes ago about a breakdown outside Tucumari. Where are you now?" "Amarillo, at a truck stop," she answered, voice barely above a whisper. "I haven't called you today except just now." An icy silence stretched between them as Janet hesitated, then spoke again, each word deliberate. "Looking at my caller ID log," Janet said softly. "The call came from your number. The voice sounds exactly like you. Someone's impersonating you. They've got access to your info and are using it to commit crimes." The words sank into her gut like a dagger. "Contact our insurance and the DOT immediately," Janet continued. "But that's not all. I've been getting calls from law enforcement about your employment, your cargo receipts. It's not routine. Something's seriously wrong." Melissa ended the call, her mind racing. The door of her truck swung open, and she climbed into the cabin, feeling the familiar hum of her engine, a fragile island amid chaos. Outside, other trucks idled and shone under neon lights, their quiet reassurance harshly contrasted by the storm swirling inside her. Then she saw it, the second Freightliner Cascadia, identical in every detail, tailing her at a cautious distance. Not close enough for recognition, but close enough for threat. Her stomach clenched. Heart pounding like a second engine, she snatched her CB radio. "Breaker 1N, this is Desert Rose," she whispered into the crackling silence. Melissa's hand tightened around the microphone, her breath hitching as her own voice crackled back at her with disturbing clarity. The static was thick, the line whispering with a familiar cadence. Her own words, yet undeniably not her. "This is Desert Rose. What Freightliner are you talking about? I don't see any truck following me." The voice's tone was smooth, unhurried, but chilling in its calm assertion. The static flickered, distorting the sound, and Melissa's stomach twisted. Someone had not only robbed her identity and duplicated her truck, but had mastered her voice, mimicking her speech patterns with unsettling perfection. Her fingers trembled as she whispered into the radio, "Who are you? Why are you pretending to be me?" The reply was almost too perfect, the words echoing her own. "I think you have me confused with someone else. This is Melissa Rodriguez, driving for Rodriguez Transport Solutions. I'm hauling electronics from Dallas to Phoenix. Please stop harassing me on the radio." Within moments, other drivers began to chime in, confusion thickening the airwaves as voices overlapped, some questioning, others dismissing. Melissa tried to clarify, to protest, but her words only sounded more frantic, more unstable. She switched channels, desperate to reach law enforcement, unsure how to report this nightmare, when the impersonator sounded exactly like her voice, intonation, cadence, an eerie mirror. The trail of the doppelganger stretched on beyond 50 miles, until near Tucumari, New Mexico, the truck abruptly exited. Melissa hesitated, her fist tightening on the wheel, weighing her options against her urgent delivery schedule to Phoenix. She keyed her radio again, making note of the mile marker and exit planning to report the exact location once she reached safety. But the nightmare intensified in Albuquerque. As she pulled into a fuel stop, her skin prickled when Carlos, a young attendant with a wary glare and a name tag, approached her truck. His voice was cold, edged with suspicion. "Lady, you got some nerve showing your face here after last week." Melissa blinked, bewildered. "I've never been to this place before. What are you talking about?" Carlos's eyes flicked with hostility. "You threatened my manager last time, refused to pay for the showers, yelled about shutting this place down over health code violations. Then the cops had to get involved." Melissa shoved her logbook across the counter, showing the entries proof that she'd been in Oklahoma and Arkansas, nowhere near New Mexico. Yet Carlos's glare didn't soften, and the other driver's suspicious looks sharpened her fear. Suddenly, flashing lights spilled across the lot as a police cruiser rolled in. Officer Patricia Hernandez stepped out, her hand resting on her service weapon, piercing eyes fixed on Melissa. "Ma'am, I need to see your CDL and cargo manifest." Melissa offered her documents, her voice trembling as she explained everything: the radio, the impersonator, her innocence. Officer Hernandez studied her paperwork, then retreated to run background checks, returning with a grim look. "Ms. Rodriguez, there are active investigations involving your name and truck ID. Federal agencies want to speak with you immediately." Panic rising, Melissa insisted her innocence, explaining how someone was framing her, using her voice, her truck, her identity to cover a criminal enterprise she knew nothing about. But the officer's expression hardened. "Until we figure this out, I need you to come with us, for questioning." That night, confined in a sterile interrogation room, Melissa's world collapsed further. Agents Maria Santos and David Kim presented her with surveillance photos, images from truck stops and border checkpoints over 6 months, each featuring a woman identical to her, driving her truck in locations where her records showed she wasn't. "Ms. Rodriguez," Agent Santos said gravely, sliding photos across the table. "These are from investigations into human trafficking and drug smuggling. The woman in these pictures appears to be you." Melissa shook her head fiercely. "I was never there. My logbooks, receipts, everything proves I wasn't." Agent Kim added, spreading more images. "But we also have footage, credit card records, witness statements, all pointing to your presence at these sites." Staring in disbelief, Melissa saw her own life carved into these documents, an alternate history filled with crimes she'd never committed. Someone had fabricated a perfect, incriminating falsehood, a digital echo of her identity, now woven into a criminal web. "Someone is framing me," she insisted, voice cracking. "They have my personal info, my truck specs, even my voice. This is identity theft on a scale I never imagined." 6 hours stretched on as the agents unveiled the deadly scope. The imposter was recruiting legitimate drivers, offering hefty pay to smuggle contraband, then eliminating anyone who got too close or doubted the game. The dead drivers' identities had been assimilated into the criminal network, ghosts used to maintain a facade of legitimacy. Finally, Agent Santos relayed a heart-stopping warning. "If you're truly innocent, you're in grave danger. Whoever's doing this has killed at least 3 drivers we know of, eliminating witnesses. You're not just dealing with theft, you're fighting for your life." Melissa staggered out at midnight, her mind racing and her reputation shattered. Her scheduled delivery to Phoenix was now hopelessly delayed, her name stained, her freedom jeopardized by accusations out of her control. With trembling resolve, she climbed back into her truck, engine humming to life, intent on reaching Phoenix and uncovering the truth. Yet, as she merged onto Interstate 40, her blood went cold. The headlights of her impersonator reappeared behind her, gaining speed, intent, relentless. Not content with distant mimicry, the imposter was now hunting her, closing the gap. The faint pattern of headlights in her mirror seemed almost mocking. Like a game, a cruel chase in the endless desert darkness. Her fingers clenched the wheel tighter as she floored the accelerator past safe limits, racing toward populated areas where she might find refuge. The highway stretched ahead, an alien, echoing silence broken only by her pounding heart. In that moment, she reached briefly for the CB radio, voice trembling, desperate for allies. "Mayday! Mayday! This is Melissa Rodriguez. I'm being chased, someone imitating me. If anyone hears this, call law enforcement. Please." Her own reply whispered back through the static, cold and unnerving. "This is Melissa Rodriguez. There's no emergency. Disregard, someone's playing a prank." But she saw her reflection in the side mirror eyes identical to hers, cold, determined, her reflection staring back with menace. This wasn't a joke anymore. Her real hunt had just begun. The crew moved with painstaking caution, handling each container as if it contained explosive ordnance or radioactive cores. Their hands worked deliberately, securing straps tighter than necessary, padding surfaces into suffocating layers of protection. Bobby noticed, almost absent-mindedly, that several containers were connected to small electronic devices that blinked with silent, irregular beeps. He tore his gaze away from the scene and asked, "What are those monitoring devices?" "Temperature and humidity sensors," the foreman replied, voice muffled through the thick dust and the hum of machinery. "The cargo's extremely sensitive. If any alarm sounds, you must notify the dispatcher immediately." Bobby nodded, the weight of the unspoken, the importance and danger settling in. He climbed swiftly into his Peterbilt 389, the engine's deep rumble immediately filling the silence. As he checked his mirrors, the loading crew sealed his trailer doors with official-looking bands, stark and unmarked, sealing his fate as much as the cargo. The warehouse district was eerily quiet, only security lights flickering and the distant glow of Louisville's downtown cutting through the darkness. His route would zigzag southeast along Highway 60, then wind through back roads, avoiding busy centers and prying eyes. The first 30 minutes passed smoothly, the steady hum of the engine, the rhythmic beeping from the containers. Bobby kept his speed at a precise 55 mph. Monitoring the cargo through the trailer's internal camera system, the containers locked in place, the electronic sensors quietly alert. The night was cold and clear, patches of fog threading their way between hills as Kentucky settled into late October. Then, at mile marker 47, came the first anomaly, a subtle hum buried beneath the diesel engine, almost like a breath or heartbeat faintly pulsing in the silence. He initially dismissed it as mechanical vibration, but the sound deepened, grew more organic, rhythmic, breathing softly like something alive. Bobby's gaze darted to the trailer camera. The containers seemed unchanged, secured as before. Yet the electronic devices beeped faster, their steady rhythm ratcheting into a frantic pulse. He grabbed his CB radio, voice tense, trying to reach dispatch, but only static responded. His cell phone displayed full bars, yet the screen flickered and blacked out, as if seeking to deny him coverage. The humming turned into a layered chorus, harmonies that made his skin crawl. Several monitors flashed red warning lights, blinking erratically. Then he saw it. Some containers winking with red, others dimming and brightening like breathing. The devices inside flared with warnings, signals out of sync, desperate and unnatural. Pulling over at a deserted rest area near Bardstown, Bobby felt a cold knot of dread tighten. He stepped down from his cab into troubling silence. No cars, no sounds, not even the faintest whisper of wind. The parking lot was an eerie shell of normality, stripped of trash cans, picnic tables, even signs. Like a stage set abandoned in haste. He crept toward his trailer, listening intently. The hum persisted, now deafening, layered with other sounds. Fingernails scratching metal, rhythmic taps. disturbingly muffled voices speaking in languages he didn't recognize, muffled and disjointed. His hand hesitated on the trailer door, but the seals were unbreakable, an enforced barrier he dared not breach. Returning to his cab, Bobby tried his GPS again. The screen flickered, then showed him as floating in blackness, a ghost adrift in an empty void. No roads, no landmarks, no sense of where he was or where he should go. He restarted the device, but it stubbornly refused to update, showing the same impossible coordinates. Guided by mile markers and road signs, he resumed, but the landscape around him warped. Trees grew in unnatural, geometric arrangements. Farmhouses flickered into visibility, sometimes decayed and abandoned, sometimes seemingly untouched for decades. Passing a grain silo, he saw it. An impossibility. Half-rusted, half-freshly painted, existing simultaneously in multiple time frames. Inside his truck, the sounds evolved. The humming turned into voices singing, a chorus in scales beyond human comprehension, layered over scratching and tapping that intensified, as if something inside the containers strained to break free. Vibration shot through the truck's chassis, the very metal trembling under unseen pressure. At 4:23 a.m., cresting a hill, Bobby caught sight of lights below. Yet they weren't the familiar glow of Lexington or any city he knew. These were too bright, too precise, arranged in impossible patterns, hurting his eyes with their unnatural brilliance. As he drew closer, he realized he was approaching a structure that defied all logic. The building stretched across acres of what his GPS called empty farmland. Its exterior was sleek brushed steel, identical in hue and texture to his cargo containers, featureless and ominous. No windows, no signs, no architecture that resembled human design. Only shapes projected at impossible angles, casting shadows that bent and shifted against the night sky. Bobby parked at what seemed like a circular loading dock, alien in form, more akin to a surgical arena than a warehouse. The surrounding equipment looked eerily medical, smooth, sterile instruments rather than industrial machinery. As he turned off his engine, the unnatural silence settled over him. No hum from machinery, no voices, not even the faintest electronic hum. A figure emerged from the facility, a silhouette dressed in unmarked coveralls, their movements eerily smooth, gliding across the ground as if weightless. As it drew closer to his cab, it tapped gently on the window with fingers unnaturally thin and long. Its eyes, if visible, would have been unreadable. "I have a delivery for Research Complex Omega-7, it said, voice devoid of tone, lips unmoving. Despite the oddness, it sounded normal. "Please present identification and cargo receipt." Bobby hesitated, instinct warning him to hold his ground. But the figure handed him documents, printed on the same shimmering material as the container's words, shifting and flickering before his eyes. The headers bore symbols that burned his vision. Signatures resembling cryptic equations rather than names. "Begin unloading process," the figure instructed, voice flat, yet clearly commanding. "Remain in vehicle during transfer. Do not observe procedures directly." Bobby wanted to argue, to demand answers, but as more figures emerged from the shadows of the facility, he realized normal rules no longer applied. Their gait was inhuman, their movements too fluid, their coveralls concealing shapes that defied classification. Inside his truck, the sounds of cargo transfer were wrong. No hydraulic groans, no metallic screeches, only muffled thuds and the faint whisper of doors closing. No human could produce such silence, yet the cargo was being moved, somehow, with uncanny efficiency. When the transfer ended, one figure returned to the cab, its presence cold and final. "Transport contract fulfilled. Return to origin point via designated route. Do not deviate. Do not discuss cargo contents. Payment will be processed automatically. Bobby fired up the engine and began his departure, relief flooding him as he raced away from the impossible complex. But as he looked into his mirrors, the building loomed for a moment longer, then faded, melting into shadows, vanishing as if it had never been there. Within minutes, the landscape was empty again, untouched except for the eerie memory. His GPS flickered back on, perfectly accurate, and his cell signal returned in a rush. The normal trucker chatter crackled over his CB. Yet, beneath the returning normalcy, a single, unshakable truth lurked. His trailer was empty, unburdened, yet the weight sensors registered 18,000 pounds. A mass that existed, felt though no object remained within. He pulled over, clutching the sides of his cab, inspecting the emptiness tray again and again. The scales refused to lie. He was hauling nothing, yet the scale measure hung steady. The return trip, 6 hours of haunted silence, played endlessly in his mind. How could he have delivered cargo that defied existence? Unloaded by figures not quite human, in a location that couldn't be real. The payment had landed in his account, strangely prompt and precise, from a company with no trace, no record. When he finally reached Louisville's warehouse district, where the pickup had occurred, he found nothing. No building, no remnants, just an empty lot, washed clean as if erased in the blink of an eye. Edwards had never truly existed, at least, not in the records that mattered. No employment file, no contractual trace. The man who had once been the shift supervisor for Bobby's trucking outfit simply vanished from the Bureau's logs, wiped clean by a silence that felt deliberate. And Bobby Thompson, long-haul driver turned small-town clerk, quit the very next day, retreating into a life of mundane routine at a local furniture store. Yet, late at night when the world hushed and shadows stretched long, he still heard, always heard, the faint hum of containers no longer there, carrying cargo that belonged to destinations unmarked on any map. Some freight, he learned in those lonely hours, should never be delivered. Some places, he realized, should never be reached. The weight of those phantom trucks lingered in his mind, an unseen presence in his cab for 3 months, until they finally dissolved into nothingness. Since then, Bobby never dared drive after dark. The darkness had secrets he no longer wanted to confront. Meanwhile, Diana Washington's hands clenched the steering wheel like a lifeline. Her Volvo VNL shuddered and coughed on the steep grade outside Grants Pass, Oregon, a thin ribbon of rain smattering the windshield. The temperature gauge crept into the red, warning lights flickering in her dashboard like a carnival's nightmare. Bright, chaotic, impossible to ignore. She'd run this Pacific Northwest corridor dozens of times, hauling timber and paper between mills. But this stretch of the Cascade Mountains held a curse she'd never felt before. The engine sputtered twice, then went dead, leaving her coasting toward the shoulder as her trailer swung dangerously in the wind. Rain battered her windshield in relentless sheets, driven by gusts that rocked her truck like a toy in a tempest's grip. Lightning flashed, illuminating the dense forest, pressing against either side of Highway 199. She steered onto a gravel turnout, barely wide enough to contain her truck and trailer, her heart pounding with a mix of fatigue and dread. Through rain-streaked glass, she saw nothing. Only towering Douglas firs and ancient cedars, their dark silhouettes swallowing her headlights' feeble glow. Crescent City was still 40 miles northwest, and cell service had already disappeared, swallowed by the storm's fury. She grabbed her flashlight and rain gear, stepping out into the cold darkness. The engine was cold and silent, revealing a radiator hose torn and pulled loose, the broken connection probably from years of cycling between heat and freeze, finally giving way in these mountains. No repairs could be made now, and she reckoned she'd wait until dawn when light and calmer weather might make it possible. She activated her hazard lights and set out warning triangles, honoring DOT protocols even in this ghostly place, where traffic was almost nil after midnight. Her cargo piles of plywood and lumber wasn't time-sensitive. Her dispatcher would understand the delay. Relentless rain turned the highway into a rushing river, the forest into a black abyss, threatening to swallow her whole. She tried to sleep, but the noise was deafening. Wind howled through the trees, the cab grew icy, and she wrapped herself in a sleeping bag to combat the cold. Moments later, a piercing sound sliced through the storm, setting her nerves on edge. An unmistakable wailing cry from the woods on her passenger side. Her blood ran cold. It was different from wind or rain. It was human, and it was crying. She hesitated, then swung the window open a crack. Outside, the storm's din masked most sounds, but the crying grew louder, desperate, terrified, unbearable. A child, maybe a girl, sobbing with the kind of despair that lodged in her bones. Feeling an instinct more primal than reason, Diana grabbed her flashlight and rainproof jacket. She stepped into the rain, following the sound into the spreading darkness of the forest. Branches scraped her hair, soaked her clothes, clawed at her as she fought through thick undergrowth and fallen logs. "Hello," she called out, voice trembling but firm. "I hear you crying. Where are you? I'm here to help." But the wailing stopped instantaneously, swallowed by silence so complete it felt like the forest held its breath. Her heartbeat thumped loud in her ears. She waited, listening. Impossible that any human could vanish so completely. She pressed on, deeper into the woods, calling out every few steps. The terrain worsened, steep slopes, hidden ravines, and panic seeped in. But through her rain-smeared window, she glimpsed her truck's faint glow behind her. Then, abruptly, the crying shifted, no longer from the girl, but from a deeper women's chorus, mournful, ancient, overwhelming. It echoed, as if the very earth was weeping, so profound it vibrated through her bones. Instinct told her to retreat. She spun around and hurried back, lungs burning, mind racing, anything, anywhere, but this cursed wilderness. Yet the landmarks that guided her, the fallen log, the mossy boulder, the clearing were gone. The forest warped. Trees shifted from Douglas fir to towering oaks and maples. Rocky terrain morphed into bare granite. The ground beneath her feet hardened from soft pine needles to jagged earth beneath a layer of leaves, unnaturally crisp and silent in the rain. Now the sounds of mourning grew into a basso profundo, impossibly loud, resonating in her chest like cathedral organ pipes. The trees themselves seemed to cry, their trunks echoing the sound. Diana's heart hammered as she broke into a frantic run, crashing through impossible undergrowth, desperate to find her truck or any sign of safety. The landscape refused to cooperate. Streams defied gravity, flowing uphill. Trees grew in perfect geometric patterns. Clearings appeared, perfectly round and utterly barren. Minutes, or perhaps hours, she could no longer tell, ended in a clearing where her truck sat, exactly as she'd left it, hazard lights blinking and triangles set in perfect position. But the highway was gone, vanished without trace. Instead, an ancient forest stretched beyond the clearing, colossal trees from an era long extinct, reaching skyward beneath a starless, rainless sky. No moon, no stars. Only silence and a strange, oppressive calm. She approached her truck cautiously, muscles tense, expecting it to dissolve like a mirage. But it stood solid, real. Climbing inside, she reached for the engine dead, unresponsive. The electrical system was unpowered, her radio and flashlight lifeless as stone. trapped in a place that defied logic, surrounded by a wilderness that seemed to breathe and pulse with its own dark life. And then, the crying, closer now, from the surrounding 1,000-year-old trees. Shadows moved, figures emerging from the giant's bark, silently watching her, voices lost in the thick silence. An ancient, unearthly chorus of mourning, echoing from the depths of a forest that had no place existing in her world. The women moved with a haunting slowness along the muddy shoulder, their footsteps barely disturbing the damp earth beneath. Dressed in garments from different centuries, pioneer dresses and bonnets. Loggers' wives from the early 1900s, some clad in rugged, modern hiking gear. They approached Diana's truck as if pulled by some unseen current. Their faces tilted upward, eyes fixed on the cab's windows, shimmering with tears that looked like thick, golden tree sap fluid, sticky and luminous as they traced their cheeks, dripping onto their worn clothing. Their hair swayed and flickered in the wind like trembling branches, caught in an unearthly breeze. As they drew closer, their fingers reached out and pressed gentle, trembling touches against the cold metal of her vehicle. Dark stains bloomed where fingertips brushed the paint, a silent, visceral mourning. Diana's breath caught. These weren't ordinary women. They radiated a grief so profound it thickened the air, an ancient sorrow for something forever lost or shattered. She realized they were the spirits of trees, or perhaps of women, intertwined with forests that no longer dwelled in the world. And her truck, her cargo seemed to be the focus of their lament. One woman, dressed in a lumberjack's flannel shirt and faded denim, stepped forward. Her voice, when she finally spoke, sounded like wind rustling through pine needles, sharp and whispering with accusation. "You cut our homes," she said softly but urgently. "You haul our bodies away to be turned into houses, furniture, paper. You profit from our death." Her gaze bore into Diana, heavy with the weight of centuries. Diana hesitated, the words suddenly hollow. I didn't know," she murmured, feeling the inadequacy of the phrase. Her voice sounded fragile, uncertain. "I was just doing my job, hauling cargo. I never thought about where it came from." The woman's eyes narrowed, a faint wind stirring her hair. "You never thought," she echoed, voice rising just enough to carry. "That's the problem. You never thought about the homes we lost, the forests you helped erase, the creatures left with nowhere to run when their world was ripped apart just for profit." More women emerged from the surrounding shadows, victims of centuries of destruction. Some had fallen beneath falling trees during brutal logging operations. Others had perished when their villages were swallowed in clear-cut devastation. A few looked like human victims, caught in fires sparked by industry's carelessness. Each bore the same bark-colored eyes, their expressions heavy with despair, as if the earth itself mourned through them. Diana's heart pounded. "What do you want from me?" she asked, voice trembling. "Remember," they replied in unison, their voices harmonizing like the whisper of wind through ancient woods. "Remember what forests were before we were reduced to cargo. Remember what was lost in the pursuit of money, what once thrived, what thrived no longer, sacrificed on the roads you travel." As dawn's faint light seeped into the canopy of trees, the phantoms began to fade, becoming translucent, until they vanished with a whisper of wind. The towering trees receded, returning to ordinary size, merging silently into the rising light. The landscape around her transformed. The forest dissolved into the familiar outline of the highway shoulder, where she had first broken down. Her truck's electrical system surged anew, static crackling in the radio, and her cell phone displayed a weak but functional signal. The radiator hose sealed itself, the coolant refilling and pressure stabilizing. Her engine roared to life, smooth, reliable. Yet amidst the restored serenity, a haunting detail clung to her. All the lumber in her trailer bore tiny, almost invisible handprints pressed into the wood while the sap was still wet. These delicate impressions, only visible under certain light, were silent witnesses to the tree's last touch memories of sentient life momentarily captured in the grains of the wood. Diana completed her delivery in Crescent City, but her conscience remained unsettled. Weeks later, she left her job with the timber company, switching to hauling manufactured goods and electronics. Cargo free from living ghosts. Still, on quiet nights, when the wind rises strong through the trees, she can hear faint crying afar. She knows some freight carries more than just materials. It bears the accumulated grief of what was irrevocably lost. The woods had told her, in that spectral encounter, every load holds a story, some too painful to ignore. Meanwhile, on the other side of the continent, Tommy O'Sullivan's gaze was fixed on the dwindling numbers of mile markers as they scrolled past his windshield. Mile 127, 126, 125. Yet he was heading north on Interstate 95 through Maine, moving east. The signs, the mile markers, they were going backwards. In 20 years of hauling lobster equipment along this route, Tommy knew every mile, every bend, every truck stop. Yet these markers defied his knowledge. They flickered past in descending order, even as the road moved northward. His hands clenched the wheel tighter. He radioed out desperately, voice tense, asking if anyone else had noticed the anomaly. A crackling response came, unfamiliar and unsettling. "This is Pine Tree Express. What mile markers?" Tommy's eyes widened as he looked out at the signs, green with white numbers, counting down from 127. Beneath the voice's reply, another voice, his own, from years ago, piped through, recalling a first-time run, referencing a now non-existent truck stop at exit 113, just as it had been in 2021. Time itself was unraveling. Echoes from his past broadcasts, conversations he'd had long ago, overlapping through the static. He saw a younger version of himself staring back in the mirrorless wear, darker hair, fewer lines. The truck's digital clock a minute behind his own slid backward, matching the mile markers. The past was bleeding into the present, pulling him through a woven tapestry of time. He reached for the radio again, trembling. His own voice responded, asking for directions. Words he remembered speaking years ago. While the inescapable truth sank in, the highway was warping, not just space but time itself. Leaving this road might trap him forever in this fragment of the past. At mile 113, he saw the truck stop once again, frozen in 2021's perfection, freshly paved, unchanged, static in its moment. His current manifest seemed to rewrite itself, listing automotive parts bound for Presque Isle, dates shifting backward, as if history itself was rerouting beneath his wheels. The cacophony of overlapping voices, all his own from different eras, filled the cab, a relentless echo chamber of years unspooling. His past, present, and future tangled in the static, as if dimensions trembled and time refused to stay still. Outside, Maine's dark forests appeared younger, their shadows less dense, more fragile. Tommy's reflection smirked back at him, younger yet, an echo of a man he used to be, caught between worlds, between roads that do not lead where they should. His hands gripped the wheel tighter as he realized this was no ordinary detour. It was a voyage through the ghostly corridors of memory, a roadway haunted by the weight of entire lives lost or yet to be lived. Carried along the endless, twisting line of miles where time itself twisted to the will of unseen forces. A shrill beeping pierced the pre-dawn silence of Rosa Gutierrez's truck cab, yanking her from restless sleep. 3:22 a.m. flickered on the dashboard, the digital readout blinking to emphasize the emergency. The refrigerated trailer's temperature alarm screamed of danger. Nearly 13 degrees above the safe zone. Rosa's heart clenched. She pressed her palm against the cool plastic of the dashboard, trying to make sense of it all. The haul from Fresno to Los Angeles, a pristine load of prime beef, was supposed to stay at 34 degrees. Yet somehow, her sensors were spiking. She pulled into a sleepless truck stop, her truck idling, headlights casting long shadows over the asphalt. Digging out her flashlight, Rosa stepped out into the cold air, hand trembling as she approached the trailer. She grasped the handle, pulling open the inspection panel. The engine hummed steadily. Everything looked normal. But when she peered inside, her breath caught something was wrong. The smell was off. Not the familiar rich aroma of fresh beef, but something unfamiliar, damp, metallic, and oddly rancid. Her trained nose could read the subtle differences, yet this scent was unlike anything she'd ever encountered in her years hauling meat. She slipped her hand into her coat pocket, clutching her phone as she examined the cargo manifest, 42,000 pounds of Primera beef, destined for upscale restaurants. Everything checked out. Secure, documented, routine. Yet the odor persisted, deeper and stranger with each passing second. She switched on the flashlight, sweeping into the trailer's interior, but the dim light revealed only the familiar rows of crates and cold storage, untouched. Still, the air inside refused to match her expectations. Something was very wrong, but she couldn't yet see what. Her stomach knotted with unease. Rosa's mind raced through possibilities: equipment malfunction, tampered cargo, or unforeseen contamination. Suddenly, the trailer's temperature gauge flickered again, climbing even higher. The digital thermostat blinked, flashing red. The beef, the shipment she knew by heart, was somehow transforming into something else entirely. She hesitated, then took a cautious breath, sensing that this was just the beginning of the nightmare. Somewhere behind the steel walls, a mystery was unfolding, one that would challenge everything she trusted about her work and her senses. Dozens of stark white packages, wrapped in industrial plastic thicker than any Rosa had ever seen, dangled from ceiling rails of the trailer, each secured with hooks and chains. But wrong. The shapes were peculiar, disproportionate, malformed, irregular, and behind the opaque skins, faint outlines hinted at human forms. Arms, legs, torsos, definitely not beef. Her hands trembled as realization hit. These weren't meat shipments. These were human remains. Climbing out, Rosa fumbled with her phone, her mind racing. She was about to call law enforcement when her device suddenly rang. The screen flashed, "Dispatcher Martinez," and her stomach clenched. "Gutierrez, what's your status?" came Martinez's rough voice. "GPS shows you stopped in Bakersfield." "There's a problem," Rosa whispered, voice trembling. "This isn't beef. I think I'm hauling bodies." Silence, long and jagged, as if the line had snapped. Rosa's pulse hammered in her ears. Then, voice cold and commanding, Martinez spoke, words that chilled her more than the night air. "Listen carefully, Rosa. That cargo is as the manifest states. It came from an authorized facility. You're to deliver it to the exact destination. Deviate, and your family will pay the price." Rosa's breath hitched. "I've been hauling meat for 8 years. I know beef. These are people. Your daughter's at Lincoln Elementary in Modesto. Your mother lives alone at 1247 Pine Street. Your ex-husband, Carlos, works night security downtown. We know everything about them, where they are, what they do. If you don't follow instructions, they won't be safe." The threat struck her like a fist. Their detailed, intimate knowledge of her loved ones proved he spoke the truth. Rosa's mind spun. How had they obtained such information? Her job was legitimate, her record supposed to be sealed. Yet now she was certain Central Valley Transport Solutions was a facade in operation built on betrayal, using her as a pawn for something far darker. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want me to do?" "Drive to Los Angeles. Make the delivery. Forget what you saw. Keep working, stay silent, and your family stays safe." His words cut deeper. "Refuse, and they'll be the next cargo." She ended the call, standing in the cold glow of the truck stop, mind reeling as drivers passed by unaware. Her world had tilted, a terrifying choice: betray her morals and save her loved ones, or refuse and watch innocent lives be lost. Heart-pounding, she climbed back into her cab, fighting the rising panic. As she pulled onto Highway 99 southbound, her senses sharpened. Headlights appeared in her rearview mirror, exactly at a cautious distance, matching her speed, her own personal shadow. She threw a glance at her CB radio, frantic to reach a fellow driver, but only static answered. Her cell signal was dead, sanitized away, as if by some unseen hand. They had isolated her, cut off her escape, her cries for help muffled. The following vehicle maintained its ghostly vigil, relentless in its pursuit. When she pressed the accelerator, the headlights matched her surge. When she slowed, they slowed, herding her, inexorably, toward the city, and perhaps toward disaster. At 5:47 a.m., the trailer's alarm shattered the silence. But the air was colder, the digital thermometer reading 28 degrees, plunging further frozen, preserved. Someone had activated the deep freeze remotely, sealing the evidence. Rosa's attempts to override the controls failed. The system was locked tight. Another ability of the modified cargo, a mobile disposal system capable of destruction or concealment. She was no longer just a driver. She was part of a killing machine, a courier for death itself. Reaching the outskirts of Los Angeles, Rosa eased her rig into a discreet dock behind what appeared to be a legitimate meat plant. But from the inside, it was a different story. Moves were mechanical workers, efficiently unloading the refrigerated trucks, treating the meat like routine shipments. Only Rosa knew better. Inside, evidence of something grotesquely different was happening. Darkened rooms, screams silent through the thick walls, equipment designed not to process food, but to erase it. A thin, cold-eyed supervisor approached her cab as the unloading ended. His voice flat. "Excellent work, Rosa. Your next run is scheduled for tomorrow night. Same cargo, same procedures. You're now a part of this." His smile was absent of warmth, more a declaration of ownership. "I won't do this again," Rosa retorted, voice trembling. "I've been transporting the wrong stuff for over a year. I'll stop." His smile widened, hollow and cruel. "Rosa, you've been helping us for over a year. Every shipment, meat, pork, human remains proof is there. Video, receipts, every detail. If you try to expose us, we'll ensure you're linked to this, prosecuted as an accomplice." The trap had been closing for months. Rosa's silence, her compliance by design. She was sealed into a nightmare, her life a web of lies spun by monsters she'd unknowingly enabled. But her mind, desperate and resilient, sparked anew. Suddenly, her mind turned to revenge. If they relied on her knowledge of logistics, refrigeration, and disposal, then she would use it. Over the next 2 weeks, she meticulously studied their operations plates, locations, routines. She couldn't trust police. She had to act alone. And so, when she finally made her last delivery, her cargo was no longer human remains. Instead, packed neatly within her trailer, was a collection of homemade explosives meticulously assembled with the skills of her former husband, a demolitions expert she had once trusted. She made her way to the central processing facility, where they expected to receive another evidence shipment. Instead, Rosa detonated her payload, leveling the entire operation, a fiery explosion destroying their command, erasing their evidence, and scattering what remained of the organization into chaos. Months later, Rosa left long-haul trucking behind. Now she drives local routes in Oregon, a quiet life. Yet every night she passes refrigerated trucks on lonely roads, eyes flickering with suspicion. How many drivers are unknowingly carrying horrors? How many are exploited, threatened, their moral boundaries shrouded in silence? She had become more than a driver. She was a reckoning. The meat truck killers had underestimated her because they thought her a pawn. Overconfidence had sealed their fate. Some cargo is too terrible to carry. Some drivers refuse to be victims. Meanwhile, Marcus Johnson plunged through Louisiana's fog, an endless stretch of Highway 190 suddenly swallowed by a wall of mist, thick and impenetrable, as if the earth itself exhaled a dark breath, hiding what lurked within its shadows. In an instant, visibility vanished, and all that remained was the relentless hum of his truck's engine, carving a path through the unseen threat. He slowed his truck to a cautious 30 mph, asif, flipping on his hazard lights, a routine response to sudden weather shifts. But this fog wasn't like any other he'd encountered along Louisiana's Gulf Coast. It moved with purpose, swirling around his vehicle in unnatural patterns that seemed to defy physics, while whispers of sounds filter through. Distant voices, conversations in unfamiliar languages, faint radio broadcasts from forgotten eras, melodies that felt like echoes from the past. The air was thick with the hum of human presence, as if the mist contained memories, silent witnesses drifting along the road, holding on to the footprints of every traveler who'd ever crossed this stretch. At mile marker 23, Marcus caught sight of her. A figure at the edge of his headlights, a young woman in a yellow dress that looked like a relic from the 1950s. Her thumb was extended in that universal plea, her silhouette clear despite the enveloping fog, as if she hovered in a pocket of clarity, moving like a specter in a ripple of still air. Marcus hesitated. He never picked up hitchhikers on isolated roads after dark, but there was something desperate and almost fragile in her stance. He eased the truck to the shoulder, rolled down his window and asked, "Ma'am, are you all right? This isn't a safe place to be walking." Her steps approached him light, almost gliding, her movement unnervingly graceful in the cool night silence. Up close, her young face, framed by dark finger waves, was startlingly detailed, perfect makeup frozen in time. But her eyes, deep pools of profound sorrow, steadied Marcus's hand, tugging at something he couldn't quite define. "Thank you for stopping," she said softly, her voice carrying an elegant, old-fashioned Southern accent. "I've been waiting so long for someone to see me." Her gaze held his, unblinking. "Where are you headed? I can take you to the next town, but this fog, it's worsening." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I just want to go home," she whispered. "I've been trying for a very long time." Marcus helped her into the cab, her movements precise, rehearsed, as if she'd practiced this grace within a lifetime of waiting. She settled into the seat with an unnatural fluidity, her breath quiet despite the cool air, and her reflection disappeared from his mirrors. "What's your name?" Marcus asked, voice steady as he pressed the accelerator, driving into the thickening mist. "Catherine Marie Boudreau," she replied softly. "On my way to New Orleans. But something terrible happened. I don't remember much, only that the fog came down so suddenly, then the lights, and then I remember nothing after that." Her gaze drifted beyond the windshield, fixed on something Marcus couldn't see. The fog outside thickened further, reducing visibility to mere feet. Yet, oddly, Marcus felt the truck pull forward, as if driven by unseen hands, urging him deeper into the haze. "Catherine, what year do you think this is?" he asked gently. Confusion flickered across her face. Why, it's 1953, October 15th, 1953. I remember because it's my wedding anniversary. Paul's waiting for me in New Orleans. We're going to celebrate at Antoine's. A chill ran through Marcus, one that had nothing to do with the damp Louisiana air. Because today was October 15th, 2024. 71 years beyond that date, and he was sharing his cab with someone long dead. He hesitated. Catherine, I need to tell you something. It's not 1953 anymore. A lot has happened since then. Her eyes became mirrors to the headlights, unreadable and silent. That's impossible. I was just at the beauty parlor today. Mrs. Tibito did my hair for the anniversary. Paul will worry if I don't show up. The landscape shifted with every mile, revealing a landscape that should have been familiar, but felt utterly alien. Narrower roads, aging concrete barriers, signs from a bygone era. Vintage stations, classic cars from the 50s and 60s, cloaked in ghostly haze. The radio crackled an eerie soundtrack of broadcasts from the past, news reports, nostalgic commercials, melodies that sounded as if the air itself carried their ghostly echoes. Suddenly, the voice crackled through the radio. Breaker 19, this is Phantom Express. Any drivers on Highway 190 tonight? Marcus grasped his radio. This is Southern Comfort, eastbound near Lafayette. Who's this? A pause, then a calm, knowing voice responded. Phantom Express. I've driven this route for 30 years, and I've never seen fog like this. Are you picking up strange signals? Yes, Marcus replied, heart pounding. It's from the 1950s, and my passenger, she claims she's from 1953. I think she's trapped here. Listen carefully, the voice advised, voice marked by centuries of knowledge. This stretch of highway's haunted. People die in fog accidents, and sometimes they get caught in their final moments, reliving them endlessly. Your passenger's trying to finish a journey she started over 70 years ago. Marcus looked at Catherine, whose brow furrowed as she stared ahead. The mist revealed glimpses of other vehicles, timeless, lost in the loop. Vintage cars, old trucks, even horse-drawn carriages from the 1800s, all passing the same stretch of eternity. Catherine, do you remember that night? Marcus asked softly. The night you were headed to New Orleans? Her voice grew distant, voice of someone sinking into forgotten memory. The fog came so fast. There were those bright lights that weren't like any car lights, too white, too intense. I tried to stop, but my car wouldn't respond. And then I crashed. I know I did. He felt his stomach tighten. Yes, he whispered. You were killed in that accident on this same highway in 1953. You've been reliving that night ever since, trying to reach a place you'll never arrive. Her face crumpled, a ghost of her perfected 50s glamour. Her yellow dress tattered, stained, her hair disheveled, her eyes haunted with pain. Paul, I thought he'd be waiting for me, she murmured. I promised I'd see him on our anniversary, but that was over 70 years ago. The air around them roiled as the mist spun violently, buffeting the truck with unseen winds. Through the chaos, Marcus saw a procession of bygone vehicles, faded memories from every era trapped forever in the same relentless loop. A spectral parade of the lost, moving endlessly down the haunted highway. Catherine, Marcus said softly, Paul isn't waiting anymore. He's moved on, lived his life after you died, married again, grown old. It's time to let go. Her form shimmered as her apparition lost its stoic perfection. Her dress frayed, her face marred by the injuries she'd sustained. I remember now, she whispered. The driver, he was young, just like I was. He cried as he saw what happened, the storm, the fog, me, trying to make time to see Paul again. The landscape around them shifted, the modern highway re-emerging from the haze. The vintage billboards dissolved, replaced by contemporary signs, the old gas stations replaced by sleek truck stops. The fog lifted gradually, revealing the familiar Louisiana landscape, lit by the stars now shining clear above. "Let go, Catherine," Marcus urged gently. "Paul isn't waiting for you anymore, but maybe, if you're ready, you'll find something better, somewhere else." She nodded slowly, her ghostly form becoming translucent, lighter with each passing moment. "I think I see him now," she breathed, eyes softening. Not as he was, but how he became an old man, with kind eyes, standing in a place without fog or tragedy. As she faded entirely, she turned back for one last smile. "Thank you," she whispered, "for stopping, for listening. I've been trying to tell someone for 70 years. The night grew still, the fog fully dissipating. Above, the stars shone through the clear sky, silent witnesses to the endless highway, where the lost and the remembered drifted beyond the reach of time. The radio crackled back to the familiar hum of trucker chatter, the steady drone of wheels rolling over asphalt, and Marcus's GPS finally reset with a soft chime, accurate, precise, and clear for the first time in hours. The oppressive fog had lifted, the mist dissolving into the cold night air, revealing the open highway and familiar roadside markings. But as Marcus glanced over to the passenger seat, his breath hitched. There, delicately perched on the dashboard's edge, lay a fresh yellow rosette's velvety petals glistening with dew, untouched by the wind, as if it had just been plucked from a garden unseen. Attached was a note written in elegant, flowing script. "For the kind truck driver who helped me find my way home. Catherine Marie Boudreau, October 15th, 1953. His heart pounding, Marcus pulled into New Orleans' night-to-night rhythm, completing his run, cargo delivered on time as always. Yet, the image of that flower haunted him long after the engine's hum faded into silence. Curiosity pushed him to dig into the town's history, uncovering that Catherine Marie Boudreau had indeed died tragically in a truck accident on that very date, heading east towards her anniversary dinner with her husband. The obituary, hidden deep within the archives of the Times-Picayune, revealed that Paul, her husband, had survived until 1998, never remarried, clutching onto the hope of seeing her again. Whispering his last words into the abyss, I saw her waiting, beautiful, in a yellow dress beyond the highways, beyond the fog, where no more silence, no more separation. Since that night, Marcus hadn't seen the fog roll back or the ghostly girl in yellow again. But other drivers spoke in hushed tones of a young woman, her dress a shining beacon at mile marker 23 no, longer hitchhiking, simply waving gently, as if guiding travelers home. They say she's peaceful now, finally free, no longer stranded on a journey stretching back 70 years. The highway phantom had found her way. And Marcus? He considered himself privileged and unwitting witness to the closing chapter of Louisiana's most enduring ghost story. Sometimes journeys aren't measured in miles alone. Some spirits linger, waiting for the final mile to arrive. Meanwhile, Ashley Mitchell stared at the delivery schedule on the official Mountain Ridge Logistics letterhead, her stomach twisting uneasily. Montana's endless wilderness had been her home for 6 years, hauling rare and delicate cargo. But these instructions, and the cargo itself, felt wrong. Each destination index was reduced to GPS coordinates, scheduled with unnerving precision, from pickup times down to the minute, to cryptic descriptions she'd never seen before. "Acquisition materials for Project Resurrection," she repeated softly, her fingertips trembling over the ominous list. "Delivery point Alpha 47.845 degree when north, 1 to 12.1547 degree west. Tuesday, 11:47 p.m. Ceremonial implements for Project Resurrection. Delivery point Beta 46.9213 degree north, 111.8954 to ground west. Wednesday, 2:33 a.m. Restraints for Project Resurrection. Delivery point Gamma, 47.1156 to ground north. 1D-112 degree west. Wednesday, 4:15 a.m. Further unspecified items. She had picked up the first crate from an unfamiliar warehouse nestled in an industrial pocket she'd somehow missed all these years, tucked away in a forgotten corner of Great Falls. The loaders worked in silence, reverence almost, as if handling relics of sacred importance rather than commercial freight. Her glance at the shipping labels revealed symbols, unlike any she knew carved, etched into the wood and metal with tools antiquated by millennia. Her first destination was an abandoned mining camp deep within Helena National Forest, reached via treacherous logging roads barely fit for her rig. Yet, as she arrived exactly at 11:47 p.m., a disquieting sight awaited, a gathering of robed figures cloaked in shadows, their faces obscured, standing in a circle. They moved with uncanny, rehearsed efficiency, transferring the crates into caves carved into the hillside, flickering firelight illuminating chambers festooned with symbols painted in dark ochre, altars fashioned from organic matter that wriggled with life. "Delivery complete," a muffled voice spoke from behind her. A figure shrouded in a hood, eyes black as voids, reflecting no light despite her headlights. She signed silently, heart pounding in her chest, then sped away, mind racing to comprehend the unthinkable. The crates contained artifacts, objects that transcended faith, relics whispering of human sacrifice and ancient rites. Each item was etched with symbols older than Christianity or Islam, as if carried from a shadowed past before recorded history. Her next coordinates led her higher into the Bitterroot Mountains, to a site that defied maps, an ancient circle of stones, carved with symbols foreign and primitive, their origins lost to time. Here her observation changed from vague suspicion to visceral horror. From behind her mirrors, she saw the robed figures transfer restraints designed to imprison human bodies, chains and manacles, along with knives and blades. All instruments meant for flesh and blood, for rituals rooted in blood and sacrifice. They worked meticulously, rituals passed down through centuries of dark tradition. Ashley's breath caught as she recognized the depth of peril. This was no casual cult dabbling in dark arts. They wielded power, resources, a terror rooted in history's most forbidden rites. Despising the corrupt purpose of her cargo but desperate to escape, she plotted her break, only to find her systems sabotaged. The GPS refused her commands, rerouting her deeper into wilderness. Her cell service vanished into static, her CB radio crackling only with white noise. Someone had isolated her, trapping her in this relentless march toward darkness. The final destination was a concealed valley, the kind only accessible by guiding forces beyond the natural. No roads pierced this hidden basin, yet her truck moved as if led by unseen hands. The landscape blurred, trees grew and reshaped, their limbs guiding her, roots twisting through the earth in a labyrinth of ancient magic. Beyond the trees, a fortress loomed, a hybrid of medieval and primal architecture, perched on a hill surrounded by high peaks that blocked the sky, perpetually shrouded in thick fog despite the bright sky above. Inside, the scene resembled a medieval ritual, yet not history's past, but a living, breathing cult. Robed figures encircling a stone altar, preparing for a dawn ceremony. Ashley descended from her truck, heart pounding, as she watched the preparations unfold. Restraints being fastened to stone pillars, blades blessed at altars of organic stone and bone. Wooden platforms lined the scene, filled with acolytes witnessing the dark symphony of a long-anticipated event. A tall man stepped forward, the cult leader. His robes elaborate, his face unremarkable, but for his eyes, deep pools of forbidden knowledge. His voice was steady, almost welcoming. "You know my name. We know everything about you, Ashley." His words sliced through the night like a blade calm, deadly, unavoidable, an invocation of what she had unwittingly delivered, and what was now destined to unfold. The cold dawn seeped into the shadowed clearing, a bleak silence hanging over the last preparations. Ashley Mitchell's breath fogged in the crisp air, her ears tuned to the faint stirrings of the cult members, their hushed voices, the rustle of their dark garments as they moved with purpose. She stood rooted, heart pounding, yet her mind sharp as a blade. The night had revealed her nightmare, not just as a pawn caught in ritual, but as a confidant who had unwittingly carried their darkest secret. Every detail haunted her, the scripted smiles, the calm orders, those hush-hushed conversations where she'd been made complicit. She remembered the cargo she'd ferried. Mysterious containers, weighty and silent, hiding lives she'd never suspected. 3 helpless souls, silenced and concealed, their breaths so faint she thought them merely objects. Her own hands had signed the manifests, her signature, her legacy in their atrocity. The realization blurred her vision, cold sweat prickling her skin. She had been part of their chain, unwitting but culpable, her truck a vessel of horror. Her knees trembled, but she steadied herself, clutching at her resolve as the cult's leader approached, their eyes meeting in that unsettling calm. His smile was a mirror of false warmth, an invitation to betrayal. "What do you want from me?" she'd asked, voice trembling yet fierce. He had answered with an unsettling sincerity, as if discussing a routine business deal. "Ashley, your skills are precisely what we need. You've proven you can follow complex routes, handle sensitive cargo, maintain operational secrecy. We want to hire you permanently as our transportation coordinator. The materials tonight were for a single ceremony, but such shipments happen regularly. Equipment, supplies, personnel, human resources, delivered silently, efficiently." The word hit her like a punch. "Human resources," she echoed numbly, dread choking her voice as the truth unfurled. They weren't just transporting ritual supplies, they were moving the victims themselves, concealed within those unassuming containers. Unconscious, helpless, awaiting their turn for the ritual murder. "No," she whispered, eyes wide, voice cracking. "I can't." But the cult leader's face remained unchanging. His tone, cold and final, froze her blood. "Ashley, you've already done so. The cargo you delivered tonight included 3 individuals, their unaware bodies, prepared and sealed. Victims who are no longer just cargo but part of your ledger. You've been moving them for 2 nights. Tell me, how much did you know? How much did you see?" Her knees buckled, her mind racing. She had believed she was moving inanimate objects, packages, supplies, and had no idea they contained living, breathing human beings. Now she understood her role in this nightmare. An accomplice, her hands dirtied in a hunt she'd never consciously joined. The evidence, her fingerprints on manifests, her signature on receipts, her truck used in their abductions, lay bare before her. Her stomach churned with despair, knowing that any attempt to escape or expose this would be futile, her name etched into their lethal machinery. "You!" She choked on the word, voice trembling. "You'll never get away with this." The cult leader's gaze intensified, voice low and deadly. "Your silence is your protection. Any resistance makes you complicit accessory to murder, but we value your skills. Tonight, you observe. Tomorrow you begin your new role, our principal transportation coordinator." Her mind spun an endless maelstrom of fear, anger, and desperate cunning. She knew what they would do next. She understood their pattern of sacrifice, their relentless cycle of death. Her chance wouldn't come in a sudden escape. No, it would come in the planning, in the unseen, in the vengeance they never suspected. As the countdown to their ritual echoed inward, Ashley made her decision. She would turn their own system against them, using her knowledge of logistics, security, and their routines. The cult's trust gained through threats and blackmail would be their undoing. She knew their security procedures, had all the information they deemed sacred. And most crucially, she knew her own mother's desperate fight for survival, her child's future, the stakes that burned brighter than any ancient evil. Beginning during the ceremony, she carefully mapped out her rebellion. Slowly, stealthily, like the first faint light of dawn filtering through the trees. The final shipment, destined for destruction, would instead serve as her weapon. She would dismantle their operations, sever their network for good, and ensure that no one else would suffer as she had. When the sun crested over the rugged peaks of the Cabinet Mountains, her plan was set into motion. The last routes wound towards their dark destination, but this time, the cult members would not be the ones making the final, silent sacrifice. Ashley's calculated defiance would ignite the flames of justice. Fueled by her own fury, her love for her child, and her refusal to become a victim forever. In that shattered dawn, she became not just a courier of secrets, but the architect of their ruin.